The Curse of the Forest Witch. Once there was a small town nestled in the heart of the forest. The town was known for its eerie silence and the strange occurrences that took place there. The villagers lived in constant fear of the unknown, always looking over their shoulders and never venturing too far into the woods. One night, a group of teenagers decided to explore the forest, despite the warnings of the villagers. They believed that the stories were nothing but old wives' tales, meant to keep them from having any fun. But as soon as they entered the forest, they were overcome by an eerie feeling that they could not explain. The trees seemed to be closing in on them, and the darkness was so thick that they could barely see their own hands in front of them. They heard strange noises all around them, whispers and moans and screams that seemed to be coming from the trees themselves. Suddenly, one of the teenagers tripped and fell, and when he got up, he was covered in blood. The others crowded around him, horrified to see that he had been cut by a sharp branch. But then, they realized that the blood was not his own. It belonged to something else. As they looked around, they saw that the forest was teeming with creatures unlike any they had ever seen. They had twisted, gnarled bodies, with eyes that glowed in the darkness. They seemed to be made of the very forest itself, and they were closing in on the group, their mouths opening wide to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. The teenagers tried to run, but the creatures were too fast. They were quickly surrounded, and they knew that they had no chance of survival. Just as the creatures were about to attack, the teenagers were saved by a mysterious figure. This figure was dressed in all black and had a hood over his head. He tells them that he was a hunter and he had been tracking these creatures for a long time. He said that these creatures were once human, but a curse had been put on them by a witch who lived deep in the forest. The witch had been angered by the town's constant cutting down of trees and had placed a curse on the villagers, turning them into these twisted creatures. The hunter told them that the only way to break the curse was to find the witch and make her lift it. The teenagers were hesitant, but knowing they had no other choice, they followed the hunter deeper into the forest. As they walked, the hunter told them stories of the witch, how she was once a kind and gentle woman, but the constant destruction of nature had driven her mad. She had turned to dark magic to protect the forest, and now, she was consumed by it. They finally reached the witch's lair, deep in the heart of the forest. It was a twisted and gnarled tree, unlike any they had ever seen. The witch was sitting on a throne made of branches and leaves, her face twisted in a cruel and bitter expression. The hunter stepped forward and spoke to the witch, asking her to lift the curse. But the witch refused, saying that the villagers deserved to suffer for what they had done to her beloved forest. The hunter then revealed that he was not just any hunter, but a descendant of the witch, and he had the power to break the curse. With a wave of his hand, the curse was lifted, and the creatures began to change back into their human form. The teenagers watched in amazement as the twisted bodies of the creatures melted away, revealing the villagers they had known all their lives. But the witch was not satisfied. She had lost her power, and she turned her anger on the teenagers. The witch began to chant an ancient incantation, and the forest began to come to life. The trees began to twist and contort, forming into twisted versions of themselves. The teenagers were trapped, and they knew that there was no escape. Just as the witch was about to unleash her wrath on the group, the hunter stepped in front of them and began to chant his own incantation. The witch and the hunter locked in a fierce magical battle, their powers colliding in a blaze of light and energy. The teenagers watched in awe as the hunter fought against the witch, his powers growing stronger with each passing moment. The witch's powers were beginning to fade, and she knew that she was losing the battle. In a last-ditch effort, the witch unleashed a powerful curse on the hunter, but it was too late. The hunter's powers were too strong, and he was able to break the curse with ease. The witch let out a blood-curdling scream and vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a pile of ash. The forest began to return to normal, and the teenagers were able to leave. They walked back to the village, where they were greeted as heroes. The villagers thanked them for breaking the curse, and they were hailed as legends throughout the land. The teenagers had faced their fears and had emerged victorious. They had saved their village and had become true heroes. But they knew that the forest was still out there, and that there were other dangers lurking just beyond the trees. They knew that they would always have to be vigilant, and they were ready for whatever lay ahead. But they also knew that they had the power to overcome any obstacle, as long as they were together. They had faced their fears and had emerged victorious, and they knew that they would always be remembered as the ones who saved their village from the curse of the witch. As they walked back to their village, they knew that they would always be remembered as legends, and they would always be ready to face any challenge that comes their way. The village was at peace and the forest was safe once again. But the memory of the witch and her curse would always be with them, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the trees. And they knew that they would always be ready to face it, together. The end.